started in digital communications with a license back in the very, very early 80s. But before that, as a shortwave listener, I was very, very much into digital comms. And we're not talking about just CW and baud.ready. It was multi-mode decoders, which you could only purchase from the States. Very expensive. Customs always scrutinised them, but there's another story to that. They got through without being scrutinised in the end. It really started when I was about 8, I think. My father used to listen to the market reports on his mantle radio. And of course, the tuning gang string was broken and the back was off. So you put your hand behind the back and switched it to shortwave while they were out there picking one day and just started tuning around the shortwave bands. Heard this funny sound, buzzsaw sound. I wondered, what the heck is that? What's its purpose and who's transmitting it? Unbeknownst to me, I found out a lot later, it was FDM, frequency division multiplex, on a standard audio voice bandwidth. I think it was up to 12 or 16 data channels. So you can imagine the bandwidth and how stable your receiver had to be. Anyway, we got into that many years later, and that's what started the road to digital communications. If you could decode it and it made a noise, I want to know who it was from and where it was going and what it actually was, even if it was encrypted. I just enjoyed doing it, still do. Anyway, we'll start with Winlink. Now, Winlink is a free software package that can send and receive email to and from anyone. Now, having said that, if anyone's going to send an email to you, they've got to send it to your winlink.org address. It's free to register with Winlink, unlike, say, Microsoft. You've got to register with outlook.com because I want to plagiarise your details, obviously. I'm not a fan of that. You can send attachments, you can request, reply, read receipts, etc. You can send preset forms, which is very useful, say, for a Watson exercise, for example, because they're HTML forms, so you just tab between the fields. So it's very easy to, say, get the date and time off the computer without inputting it. So it's very handy for that. And if you've got a GPS connected, it can put your coordinates in there as well automatically. Now you might say this day and age, why do you want email? Well, on a radio. Okay, you might be out camping. You might have access to a cellular phone network. Caravanning, camping, as I said, whatever, four-wheel driving, and you've got to send an email or receive an email. So it's an easy form of keeping in touch with the outside world. Most modern radios can do it quite easily. A lot of the modern ones now have a USB modem built in. So it's basically a data mode, no different to packet, FT8, whatever else. So it's very easy to set up. Bit of history about how Winlink started. It was started by a chap called Vic Paul back in the early 80s. Now, he was a programmer, but he was also a little bit more than that. Very, very smart chap who lived in a yacht on the Great Lakes in the top end of the States. He developed AppLink. It was a cross-mode DOS software back in those days. VHF packet was on one side. You can remember back in the early 80s, mid-80s, packet was very, very popular. A predecessor to internet, of course. And on the HF side for long range, you had, back in those days, CTOR or AMTOR mode A, sorry, which is an ARQ mode, very robust, but you've got a timing issue when you get to, say, from here to England. It's just right on the verge of it listening for the act back for the error correction. So it's on the almost no-go zone. Top end of Scotland, definitely not. But London, I've made it a few times, but not often. It's more luck than good management, I think. Long path, forget it. Anyway, he developed AppLink with those modes. He later implemented Pactor a couple of revisions later, Pactor 1, which was a lot faster with error correction. And then later on, he eventually introduced a mode by HAL, which is an American manufacturer, called Clover. I think, going on memory, it was an 8-tone mode. Full ISA slot card. Only one other person I knew that had it, and that was Gordon, 2AGE. But it was far faster than Pactor. And that's how it started. He left it as AppLink, but not many people used it after that because the normal packet programs, well, they developed compression for packet on 300 baud, sort of negated the other HF modes to a degree. And you only had to run one software instead of 2 or 3 or 4, which on DOS machines was a little bit awkward unless you knew what you were doing. It was possible. He later then developed Winlink, which is really the predecessor to what we know now. He unfortunately died 2012. Now, the software that's used currently is called Winlink Express. It looks like the old Outlook Express, as you can see. The software is free to download from winlink.org. There's other variations, but that one does all the modes, so that's the only one you're going to really bother with. To use it, you've got to register. I'll go to another screen. Your details there. You've got to put in a proper email address because if you've got to reset your password, it's got to be sent to an email address so you can access. But you know, the details aren't. That's the software itself. You can pay a donation. It takes out the NAG screen. I forget what it is, $20 US or whatever. And that goes to their ARES group, which is a bit like RayNet in England, MCOM in the States, Washington and New South Wales, or Australia, I should say. If you don't donate, it still works. You just wait 10 seconds for the NAG screen, remind me, or just let it time out, and just close the little pop-up box and away you go. Okay, as I mentioned before, you might wonder why do you want to use an email client when you've got cellular phones. As I said, if you're camping, out in the bush, travelling or whatever, you haven't got cellular phone access, it's a great way of doing it. And you can also receive. So if people want to know where you're okay, or you want to send a message, look, I've broken down, can you get in touch with the nearest town? Send a mechanic out. You know, if you've got HF radio and you're in contact with one of the 4-wheel drive groups, you can do the same thing, cell call them and away you go. You can see all the, wrong one. You can see the different modes it can do there. These days, Winmore is obsolete. RDOP, it's slow, but it's incorporated into the package. I personally don't like it, it's too slow. VARA, the unregistered version, far, far faster than RDOP will ever hope to be. And if you do register it, it's brilliant. As an example, Washington had an exercise last February called FEBEX. And you had a set report that you had to send to the base station. Now with voice comms, you had to basically send the message slowly so they could write it down without too many repeats. So you send it as fast as I can write it down. A report took an average of 3 to 4 minutes. With Winlink, the only errors would be fat fingers, of course. You got 4 reports in 1 minute with hardly any input. 1 click of the, or 2 clicks of the mouse and away it went. So it's very quick, very efficient for traffic handling. Now there's gateway stations all over the world. I think Australia's got, about 8, I think, going on memory, on HF anyway, and there's probably about 2 or 3 on VHF and UHF. And you can connect either to, well, you basically connect to the one you've got a path with, doesn't matter how far away it is. You've got a table there that it builds up depending on the sunspot cycle. So it basically predicts the best frequency to use for where you want to go. You'll see it's red, green and yellow. Obviously green, you've got a good path. Red, you're wasting your time. Yellow, marginal. But if you've got no recourse, you try it. There's the details for the home page. That's a download link, obviously. And if you really want some heavy reading, you download the manual. Well, it gives you all the details about Winlink. Now, it's a sound card modem, predominantly, or sound card mode, I should say, except for packet, depending on whether you use a TNC or a sound card. And of course, Pactor, you've got to use the proprietary TNCs, which are very expensive. They're the ultimate, but you've got to pay for it unless you're lucky enough to pick up a second-hand one. Pactor 4 one, the cheapest second-hand ones I've seen is just over $1,000. The cheapest Pactor 3 or 2 modems I've seen is about $400 or $500, but they are very robust. Pactor 3 and 4 will work down to a lower signal level than what Vara ever will, but Vara is very efficient, having said that. Now, when you go to Device Manager in Windows anyway, you've got your standard sound card, and then when you plug something in, you might have an extra one pop up. That's an easy one to find out, as you'll see later. Okay, what sound card number is it? And if you've got a few devices plugged in, it can be a challenge. Same with the COM ports. If you've got 2 or 3 radios plugged into a computer, be it notebook or otherwise, for Windows anyway, you might be wondering what COM port it's using for control. Now, if you use CAT, it's very easy. You set your Winlink on a call sign, double click on it, it'll change the frequency automatically for you if you've got CAT set up properly. So it's almost foolproof. Including the mode. All Winlink is upper sideband on HF. Doesn't matter whether you're on 80 metres or otherwise. Okay, this is what I mean with a challenge. As you can see there, all the different COM ports and all the different sound card or audio devices. You might think, okay, which one am I using when I'm using my signal link, for example? Easy. Bring your device manager up, go to the relevant area with your COM ports or your sound devices, and pull your USB lead out. You'll see it disappear. You might have to do it a couple of times to find out which COM port it is or which sound card it is, but it's very easy to do. Now, the important thing with sound card modes, Windows will put your USB ports to sleep by default. Now, if you're going to use data mode, that's a no-no. You might say, well, I'm on the computer. What's the difference? Okay, if someone says to you, I'm going to send you a message in half an hour, I guarantee you the USB ports will be falling asleep, so they've got no power going to them. Like a wake on LAN, it's supposed to come back up when it detects a signal. Yeah, this is Microsoft we're talking about. It's not 101% reliable. If you're in an emergency situation, you want 101% reliability. The other thing you don't do on HF particularly is transmit your Windows default sounds. How many times you hear a ping or a Windows open program or your email sound come over HF? You hear it probably at least twice a day on FT8. Now, somebody's got their default sounds set to on. So you turn your default sounds to off in the control panel. Audio devices on the control panel. I think it's that area there. Oh, no.
Not a new mode on like Windows 11 that way you set communications. Then it turns all those things off.
Yeah, Windows 11 I don't know about.
I think it's got, it says to do that, you do procedures that cell cards have communications mode and
Yeah, even with Windows 7 and Vista, I think, it had a tick box there, what to do when there's communications mode, as you said. Basically, you have it do nothing. It doesn't prioritise itself. You do the priority because it doesn't really understand what you're doing, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, there's your audio devices in control panel. You go to the, I think it's the sound icon. Okay, you got your normal speakers there. That's a standard setup. That's a standard setup for microphones. Ignore the second one there. There's your sound, your default sounds that you turn off when you're running a data mode, particularly on HF. Just on the drop-down box, just do have blank or nothing. And that's when it detects a communication, do nothing there. That's the one you were talking about. Oh. Now we've covered the setup for Winlink Express. Okay. If you've got a second call sign, you can put it in there as well. If you're on a license exercise and you might have checkpoint 1, for example, you can put it in there. That's the registration key. I was telling you about the donation. You don't have to if you don't want to. You just get the nag and let it time out. Leave that as it is. That's default. It's up to you if you want to do any beta testing for them or not. I personally wouldn't. That's default. Now with messaging, this is where the traps are. Okay, as you can see, it's a standard Outlook Express form, effectively. The to field, you can separate that by semicolons if you're going to have more than one call sign. Or you can put it in the carbon copy, works the same. You just separate them by a semicolon. Subject and the text, but here's where it's different. Post to outbox, and I'll explain these. The first one is a Winlink message. Now, Winlink works with a central master server, CMS. What it means is you can send an email, Winlink email, to any gateway station, whether it's VHF or HF, anywhere that you can contact, whether it's overseas or locally. It'll go to that gateway. That means it'll be sent to the internet service providers depending on where the destination is. If it's another Winlink email, what that means is that station can poll any Winlink station and retrieve that email, no matter where they are. So they can be mobile, they could be camping, they could be anywhere. If they can't access, say, VK3 MIT, they might be able to access a VK4 station, a gateway station, so they can retrieve the email that way. That's what the central master server allows you to do. And if someone, say from home, sends you an email, you can retrieve it because it goes through the gateway. The radio-only mode, if you don't want it to go to a gateway, a CMS, what it means is that message will only sit on that gateway that you actually send it to. It has to be retrieved from there via radio link normally. Now, if they're running 2 or 3 ports, doesn't matter which port you go. Having said that, there is a variation to that. With Winlink, you can set it to, oh, I hate acronyms. I'll show you later if we don't run out of time. What it allows you to do, you can nominate in your setup other stations that will hold that message for you for a radio-only message. So in other words, you send a message to VK3ZZZ, and you only want them to retrieve it via radio link only. But you're not sure whether 3ZZ can pick up the gateway that you send it to, say on HF, so it's a VK4. Now he's got to designate at his end before he leaves, say for example, pickup stations. What that'll do, that'll duplicate that email to the stations that that person nominated. It'll send that email automatically, even though they're on a frequency that gateway is not scanning. It'll QSY, it'll send the same message to all of the ones that are nominated and sit there and wait. If you happen to retrieve that message from one of the nominated ones, not the gateway that you originally sent it to, the thing will QSY and tell the other station with a short data burst that that message has been retrieved. Please delete it. So you don't have to go to 2 or 3 nominated stations to retrieve your email every time. So it's quite smart, for want of a better word. The explanation is more cumbersome than the actual doing of it. The peer-to-peer one, basically the other station has got to connect to you. So in other words, I've got a friend or a licensed operator somewhere and I want to send them a message during an exercise or otherwise. They've got to connect to you to retrieve that message. It doesn't go to a gateway. That's the only way you can do it. You don't have a choice of it going to 2 or 3, okay? You can forward it to 2 or 3 stations, but he's got to connect to each one of them manually. Now, if you don't send that in the right format, so in other words, you compose a Winlink message and they connect to you in peer-to-peer, they can't retrieve the message. They'll just say there's nothing for you. So you've got to make sure that's correct. I'll get it right. Okay, the setup. The radio setup is to do with CAT, computer control of your radio, basically through USB or RS-232 if you've still got it. Otherwise, you still can do a manual one. What it means is you go to your dial frequency, you've got to dial it up manually. Make sure you're always in upper sideband if it's HF. The TNC setup is basically the setup for your sound card. Some areas you can leave as default, other areas you can't. Where are we? Okay, that's the audio setup for RDOP. Now there, the 705 has got to be set up as a 7300 as far as Winlink goes. You've got to use effectively non-standard CIV addresses. That setup there works for the 705, but there's plenty of information on the web. You'll find most of the rigs will work with the standard addresses. That's where the COM port comes in handy there. The top one is always a control port as far as ICOMs go. And that's a port there that you nominate there with a baud rate that you've got in your menu system. Unlike the old days, you can go pretty well as fast as you like. Computers can keep up with it nowadays. I'll go back to there. Yeah, that one's fine. That's a sound card setup. So depending on what you're using, if you're using leads on your notebook or whatever, your standard microphone and speaker jack, you've got to nominate that in the drop-down box. If you're using a signal link, same. If you're using the sound card built into your radio, that's where you go back to the device manager and see which one pops on and off, and you set it there. Leave the default there, the IP address, that means it's on the same computer. The port address you leave the same, and that you leave the same. Drive level, that comes to ALC drive. With HF data, you want minimal to no ALC drive indicated on your meter at all if you can. Not everyone will agree with that, but it's your signal, not mine. The other side, that's your devices. That one there won't tell you the number of that there, but that when you go to sound on a control panel, it will. That's why you've got to transpose between the two. Oh. Okay, you open a session under Winlink, so you want to go to RDOP or whatever. You've got to update the frequency tables with the call signs. When you, I think I missed a slide there when I set that up. You pick the mode you want in a drop-down box about there somewhere, and then you go, it'll open the session window, initializes your modem, and you're ready to go. Up there you'll see wrong one. The best channels or the best frequencies. You update that before you leave, preferably at home with a good internet connection. You can do it via radio, but obviously it's going to be a lot slower. As you can see there, green means you're going to have a good link. Red, not really, not happening. Yellow, well, good luck. As you can see there, you've got the VK call signs. It depends on how you nominate it. But generally the green ones, the better parts of where you are, will be at the top. That comes down to your QRA locator. And all you got to do is just double click on the call sign. It'll change your frequency on your radio automatically, and away you'll go. Now RDOP, that's the modem. That's a little window that can be pushed anywhere. And when you actually do a connection, you can see the protocol exchange there. In other words, it'll poll the other station to see if it's got any messages for you. It'll say a Y for 1, Y for 2, and so forth. It'll send a reverse forward, and away it'll go. When it's finished, it'll just send an FQ, which means the software knows it's got to disconnect. That's your tuning indicator there, and that's the waterfall of the signal from the transmitting station you're receiving. So you can easily tell whether the ALC is overdriven or not, I can assure you. Frequency, you got to be pretty accurate. Unless you're using a very old radio that's drifting, you shouldn't have a problem. That'll come to, you got the center frequency and your dial frequency. The table you had before, they're all dial frequencies. So if you don't have cut control on your radio, you can go to the manual frequency. You just got to dial up the dial up frequency there. Just input it there. But normally it won't let you unless you put in the center frequency. So it's minus, oh, I can't remember now, 1.7 or whatever it is.
1.5, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be, I think. I can't remember. You do it all the time, but you do it without thinking. That's the problem. Oh, I'm talking about the end of the slide. Okay. We'll go to some manual stuff. All right. Oh, I'll get... Okay. I'm on the real one here. I'll get it right yet. Okay. Now, I'll use VAR as an example. There's a drop-down box that you pick all the different modes. As you can see, telnet is an internet connection. Say you're at base on a Boston exercise, and you've got access to the cellular network. You can post all the messages you want for the stations that are out there, only accessible via radio. So it's handy for that. Packet Winlink is generally VHF, but that's configurable depending on the turnkey or modem you're using. So it could be 300 baud, could be 1200 baud AFSK. PACTOR, depending on which flavour of SCS modems you've got, TNCs you've got. It'll either be PACTOR 2 up to 4. Robust Packet Winlink, that's almost obsolete. I think they've discontinued their modem. That's the German group, SCS. Wasn't overly used in Australia that much because of the price of the modem. It's a shame because they're only tiny little things. RDOP is what comes standard with Winlink. Now, it's implemented with Mac and Raspberry Pi. That's its only advantage. It's very slow, but it works. VARA is the one I prefer. The unregistered version is far faster than RDOP, but if you pay the, what, $70, $80, Dan? Australian, the speed is fantastic. I think it goes up to, what, 3K a second on a good link. So it's worth it if you're going to use it a lot. If you're not, just stick to VARA HF. VARA FM, very, very fast. You know, what packet should have been all those years ago, but I think there's only one VK4 that uses it as a gateway in Australia. So it's not happening. That's for satellites, obviously. Now, peer-to-peer, the same thing all over again, but it means station-to-station direct contact only. So they've got to have a link. Now, radio only is what I mentioned before. If you nominate the pickup stations, you can pick up one message from up to 3 different pickup points, and that's where your radio only will be used. And to do that, where are we here? Okay, you can nominate whichever station you want, up to 3, for a pickup point, okay? I won't worry about the acronyms, I'll bore you to tears, and I won't mention it because I can't remember them all. But you can nominate which stations you want your message to be located at, up to 3. So send it to 1, it'll go to those other 3 automatically. And when you retrieve it, as I mentioned, it'll be deleted off the others at the same time. So it's quite useful when you're not sure the path from one station to another.
Peter,
Yep.
question. If you choose a mode on all the different modes there, do the receiving stations automatically select it?
No, you can use whatever mode you want. So it can be cross-mode, cross-band. So if you send a message to someone using RDOP on 40, there's nothing to stop them retrieving it on VAR on 80 or 15. So, you know, even using, say, PACTOR, not a problem. Doesn't have to be the same mode or same band. That's the beauty of it. Same when you go to a radio-only message with a pickup gateway, cross-band, cross-mode. The only thing you got to remember, if you use a manual dial-up on your rig, it's got to be upper sideband no matter what the mode, whatever band, it's got to be upper sideband on HF only. What else? You can do grid files and all sorts of things with Winlink, depending on what you're doing. Okay, you can pick an area and you can get charts of whatever's there. Now, if you're sailing, that'd be very, very useful. It gives you wind warnings and tidal waves, not tidal waves, total predictions and all sorts of things. So for those who are into it, it's certainly possible. I don't know what else I can add. You can poll the main server. Now, it's in that book of knowledge that you want for light reading at the beginning that I indicated. There's a lot of commands you can send that can give you responses from the server. Usually takes about 2 to 4 minutes before you get a reply, so don't expect a reply straight away. But you can find out, say, the nearest Winlink stations to you. And what it'll say in the email is the bearing, the heading, how far away they are, and a few details that they've put comments in there, and of course call sign. I've got it on the one at home but not here. This one I just loaded just to show you the menu system. Okay, the section I read, questions and answers.
Just a quick one. I just want to confirm, when you've got your Winlink set up and you've got your Winlink email address, can you reach anyone on the internet with their email addresses?
Yep.
Right? So it'll pass it on?
Yep.
Or anyone that's got a Winlink?
Anyone can send it to you if they use winlink.org or your email address,
Yeah.
or you've got your client set at home on your service provider to forward that to winlink.org. So yes, it is possible, including attachments. But you've got to remember, if you're on HF, you don't want a 20K attachment. Well, I think the best one I've seen is 192K.
Secondary question, security. If I'm sending messages, is it free text and people can code?
No, it's not. Your call signs, the subject will be straight ASCII, okay? The responses, the protocol will be straight ASCII, like FF, and FQ and all the rest of it, but the message is compressed, okay? So it's like reading raw data on packet.
But if it's just compressed, someone could uncompress it with a computer without keeping.
Well, considering how long the messages last and how random they are, you can't use Winlink Express to decode a message if it's not meant for you, number one. There was a kerfuffle, about 2 years ago in the States, I think, about Pactor-4 and encryption. Oh, because I can't read it, it's what you're indicating, it's got to be encrypted, we're not allowed encryption. And they jump on the bandwagon, their little hobby horse, and give everyone a hard time. So SCS made a Raspberry 4 program, WAP, whatever you want to call it, that could decode the traffic. But whether it actually decodes the message content or not, I don't know. I've never tried it. I personally doubt it. I think it just, like the monitor in VARA mode, will actually decode the call signs. Actually, I'll show, yeah, you can, but you can't. I'll go to VARA. Point to point, peer to peer will do. Open the session. Oh. Okay, where's my tuning indicator there? Okay, that's VARA. You can go to monitor, you can put that to on, and over there you'll see the call signs come up as they transferred either way. But there's a trap there. If you've got monitor on, no one can connect to you. So unless you're just curious as what the traffic is, who it's to from, you leave monitor off, or you will never get a connection. But the traffic is all gobbledygook, as I call it, straight ASCII. It's not straight ASCII, binary. It's all compressed. You won't be able to read that. While we got VARA, okay. Now, VARA, when you set it up, you've got to pick the right sound card, whether it's a signal link, your radio, or whatever. But the drive level is important. Now, VARA is very easy to set up. You can watch your radio and you move the slider up and down and away you'll go. Now, oh, I can't quite see it on there. Okay, the blue. There's his ALC. As far as I'm concerned, it's a little bit high. But you don't need 200 watts to make a connection on data on HF. 30 watts, 25 watts, it's ample. What did Brad do about 2 months ago? He used 10 milliwatts or something ridiculous on 80 metres to make a connection of about 40K. So, as long as your antenna's working, you're fine. So, efficiency, good earthing, bump the power level up on your drive, but don't overmodulate, let's say, with the ALC. If you're going to have any ALC, I'd go a third or a quarter of that at the most, but I still wouldn't do it. But anyway, you can adjust it there. With the other one, you've got to go to a drop-down box with RDOP and put in a number. Well, 90% I think was default. You can change it while you're watching. Put it on a dummy load, go transmit, and suss it out. But VARA is very good. You never have the receiver level more than that, really. When you're receiving, that'll go green. If the other station's off frequency, it'll vary there. It's a good indicator. And the best indicator is the signal-to-noise ratio gauge, for want of a better word. The better they are, that'll be green, the higher it'll be. But you will receive when it's in the red, but it'll take forever. Okay. Yeah, that's, if I go to Winlink, that channel selection, might have to open a session. Reload, oh no, I'm peer-to-peer. One thing you've got to be wary of either Winlink or Windows, or both. Sometimes you'll lose your sound card settings. You'll think, okay, this thing worked last time I tried, why isn't it transmitting now? Check your sound card settings. You'll probably find it's either default to the standard laptop or computer sound card, not the one you nominated to make it work. It does happen, but not often. But it will catch you out. Okay, there it goes, best channel. That'll update via internet, but only does the best channel obviously for a Winlink session. I won't do it here because I haven't got a wireless connection. Okay, any more questions? Come on, someone's got to catch me out. I'm making it up as I go. Murray.
I guess for QRP, would VARA be better than RDOP or not
Oh
necessarily?
yeah, yes. Even the standard VARA that's not registered just obliterates RDOP. It's just a shame the Raspberry Pi hasn't implemented, or the writer hasn't written a version for Raspberry Pi or Mac. Oh, Mac, I suppose you could use, what is it, Wine? That you could, well, how successfully it's a suck it and see. It's a bit like running DOS X with an old program under Windows. Most will work, but not all necessarily. I can't think of anything else. Any other questions?
How many stations are running in Australia at the moment? How many gateways?
Oh, worldwide. Actually, if you go to the winlink.org site, they all come up on a global map. I'm going to guess, but I'd say there'd be possibly 80. Yeah, they're all over the place, from South Africa to South America to whatever.
Stay on the one frequency or
No, all over, from VHF down to generally 80.
on the HF?
Oh, all over the place. You try not to tread on other people's toes. You want to be at least a bandwidth and a half, audio bandwidth and a half away.
Originally, they're all on one frequency.
Oh, yeah, but the digital segment of the band has changed over the last 30, 40 years. It's sort of expanded because you've got FT8, you've got Whisper, you've got everything. CW has more or less stayed down on the low parts, but you'll find a lot of the digital data modes have creeped down on the CW part and creeped up to the voice side, like say 14103, 14104. Years ago that was packet days. Before that it was the travelling, what's the group in Western Australia that had it? You checked in at 1 o'clock, I can't remember now, too long ago. Mark?
Well, the original question, Peter, was how many sites in Australia?
How many?
How many stations or base stations in Australia? But there's two answers to that. One is there's about a half a dozen. But the second question is there's not enough, we need more.
Yeah, true.
So the message is get your gear out and get on with it.
Yeah, try it. It's a good backup mode.
With, when you want to connect to a station, is there like a beacon you can go look for? Or is it manual? Do you have to manually go and look at each station to try and do a connection? Or is there a mode in this where you can say, okay, just have a listen and see what you can hear?
Okay, you can connect manually to a gateway, check the functioning. If it does a protocol exchange and it disconnects, even there's not a message for it, you know it's all working fine. If it does it relatively quickly, it'll prove two things. One, you've picked a good band and you've got your settings right on your radio antennas efficient. You can do the same with an acquaintance, a friend. That's where you go peer-to-peer. You can send a few messages to each other. You can experiment, say, with a file attachment, see how large you can go, how fast it goes. A lot of people look at 80 metres as only a nighttime band. Not a chance. Yeah, up to 100, 120k daytime band is probably the best there is. It's guaranteed to go through every crack and crevice on the globe. You know, it just travels as long as your antennas are efficient. Oh, well, if you've got a 40 dB over 9 noise floor, that's a different kettle of fish, unfortunately. But all being equal, you know, so you just experiment, as Mark said. Acquaintance, or just use the gateways. The gateways don't mind, they put them there for a purpose, for you to try. You don't need a message to try it, just do a connection. You can find out how the channels correspond to the table. Okay, that's green, that's yellow, but yellow didn't work today, but it's working tomorrow. Try different bands to the same station. You might find they've got a better antenna for a certain band than another, different times of the day, for example. You might have a better path to VK3 than VK4. That might change in summer. So there's a lot of areas.
That table that gets updated, does that know your location and the availability of signal? The table that gets updated, which is
Yeah.
green, you said do that before you leave.
If you can. You can update it via radio link, but it's going to be a lot slower. So you really want, say, a registered VARA and make sure you've got a good connection to a gateway, because it's fairly long. It updates a whole lot.
So they're the gateways that the program knows are actually operational at the time.
Yeah, yeah. When you update the channel via radio, you've got to tell it to go via radio, and then you nominate which one you want, and away it'll go. But before you leave home, it's best to do it then. And the tables, as far as solar flares and sunspots go, it'd be good for at least a month and a half. It's not going to change overnight. Not for what you want to do. We're not talking about sending data to a submarine and all the rest of it on 5 kilohertz. Any other questions?
So you were just saying to update the table over radio. Is that the connect to, would that be a Winlink session, or is that a...
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
or a radio only?
no. When you will open, say, a VARA HF Winlink, I'd say it'd have to be a Winlink connection, not a peer-to-peer, because a peer-to-peer can't provide that info. Oh, well, I haven't tried it, to tell you the truth. Go to best channel. I couldn't open the next window because we haven't got internet. But it'll come up with another box, another little window. No, it's not going to do it. It gives you the choice of a tick box, whether you want to go via internet or via a radio link, or update via radio, I think it says, going on memory. So you got your choice there. And basically, you can put the call signs in as your favourites there. No different to your email addresses. So if you use, say, a gateway consistently or often, and you can do the same as peer-to-peer. So in other words, I want to connect to, say, Dan. I can put his call sign in there, or Jan, or Mark, or whoever. Gateways, you can put Gerard's in there. You can put VK3 DYP in there, or whoever. So saves you looking up the tables and double clicking on them. Just go on the thing. It'll go to the channel automatically. That's the best link. So it's quite clever in a lot of ways. And actually for that call sign, depending on where you are, there's a bearing and the quality of the signal, depending on what you use. That's 40 metres. It won't be. 40 metres is too close from here to Sydney.
When you click on a gateway, you can actually save it as your favourite as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other thing I was going to ask, when you update that table, it's a theoretical table. It's not tested, is it? I mean, you'd have to test it yourself to see which is the best path.
Yeah.
So, theoretically, for the time of day,
Guide.
blah, blah, all that.
Yeah, it's just a guide. Everything, as Dan says, everything's theoretical. So, experiment before you leave home. If you ever set it up mobile or portable, you've got an understanding of how the software works, what it can and what it can't do, its shortcomings. But normally it's reliable. The most unreliable thing is a sound card, and that could be Windows combined with a Winlink Express version.
I usually find the VK3 gateway is easier for me than the VK4. I don't know why. They're just, on 40 metres, I usually get through to that VK3 on 20 metres.
Yeah, I find the same, Dan. I'll go to VK4 when none of the VK3s are working or they're busy. But VK3 is generally for local. I've seen the software change automatically with a pickup station to VK3 continuously automatically. I'm thinking, why is the thing fired up? I have a look and bingo. Any other questions?
Sorry, I missed the beginning, Peter. Did you mention position reports?
Sorry?
First of all, sorry, I missed the beginning. Secondly, did you mention position reports?
I mentioned the little commands you can send to the Winlink gateway. It'll send back the positions of the Winlink stations closest to you. The heading, the distance, and probably up to about a dozen or 15, depending on how many you request. But there's other commands you can send as well. And I can't remember all of them.
There is one standard email that you can send that sends your own position
Yeah, that's also,
and populates it on APIs.
yeah. That's where the forms come in very handy. I'll just show you all that briefly. It's very useful. Okay, you go to message, new message, select template. Okay, you can go, there's all sorts of forms there. So you can just peruse, they're all updated automatically. It's a HTML form. Now, if you go to GPS, it'll put in coordinates automatically. But see the date and the time, picks it up from the computer automatically, which is handy. All you do is just tab, submit it, and if you send that to someone else, I know where you are automatically. And there's other forms as well that are useful to send medical requests, just normal traffic, whatever. But that compared to, say, text is very efficient to send very quickly. It's also very, very compact. Not like a template, say, out of Word. If you do that, it'll probably take up 10 times longer to send. So that's the reason they use that. RayNet uses it in England, MCOM in the States, ARES in the States. WICE in Australia has used that for experimentation. As I've said before, 4 messages in 1 minute for a situation report as an exercise compared to 3 to 4 minutes for one voice report. So, but you've got to have your Winlink set up, or at least a sound card modem to utilise it.
A few of us have played with templates, editing and so forth. The problem with that is that the receiving station has to have the same template. So in other words, the document is not sent as a file. It's sent. The content of it is sent as probably ASCII. But the actual form, the receiving station requires the same template to be filled up, and then fills in all the details on it. So you can't edit them sort of as such unless you distribute the template that you've edited to the receiving station.
Which you could send to them via Winlink.
So
You can send them the edited form to them via
Oh
Winlink.
yeah, you can.
So you send just
That's right,
a new
you send
template,
the
use this
file,
one.
yeah.
You've got to give the other chap the same template. Otherwise, if you use a standard forms, it's not an issue. They're compatible.
Yeah, the standard form's great.
Just another question. If we had a 705, you'd be able to send your position with that, wouldn't you?
Start again, sorry?
An ICOM 705 has all that stuff already. So
Yeah, it's got a built-in modem.
form, you automatically send
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
we set up correctly.
You just set up your CAT port, set up your sound card device number, and away they work quite well. You'd be surprised what 10 watts can do, as long as your antennas are good. You know, that's a critical factor. Antennas are another thing. HF, I think it's very important. You don't want earth loops.